Today, really looking to talk about sustainable change driven by collaborative innovation. Okay. Before I do that, though, for those of you who don't know who CHEP is, we're part of the Brambles company. We're the main operating brand, and we have a sister company, IFCO. Brambles in FY16 had sales revenue of $5.5 billion. Between us and our sister companies, we have over 550 million pallets, crates and containers, a network of over 850 service centres across the world in over 60 countries, and we employ just over 14,500 people, and we serve multiple industries down the side there. So that's a brief overview of what we do. If you still don't know who we are, we're famous for the blue pallet. I'm desperately trying to change that, and so is the business, to move away from the blue pallet company and being perceived really as a supply chain solutions partner for our customers and suppliers. So what can you expect to hear from me today? Well, first of all, I'm going to talk about why we need to innovate, and I'm going to look at innovation through the lens of sustainability, and I'm going to touch on some innovation in business models that are more sustainable, specifically sharing economies. And then I'll work through some real-life case studies of the evolution of replenishment, store replenishment, and go through the iterative process of innovation that we go through to bring new products to market to meet our customers' needs. One of them is customer-led innovation. One of them is seeing a bit of waste in the market and how we bring that to the fore. And then finally, summing up with the power of collaborative networks. So why should we innovate? Well, the slide behind me isn't mine, but it's called The Great Acceleration, and it's by Broadgate et al. So if you look to the left-hand side, these are the socio-economic trends. And over the last 65 years, the human relationship with the natural environment has changed exponentially. So if you look at the red mark on the x-axis for each graph, that's 1950. So if you look at 1950 onwards, whether it's population, urbanisation, paper usage, water consumption, fertilisation usage, it has gone up exponentially. Huge increase in usage. And innovation has probably been attributed to some of that, enabling some of that growth and consumption. But then when you look to the right-hand side of the slide, you've got the Earth system trends, and they're the consequences of some of those socio-economic trends. So why do we need to innovate? Well, we need to innovate to undo some of the things that we have done to the Earth's ecosystem. It's a complex problem. The science does say that there's still a window of opportunity to fix some of these issues in the Earth system trends, but we've got to do it quickly. And it is innovation in terms of business models, it's innovation in terms of new products and new technology that may just help us do that, but it's not going to happen without collaboration. So in terms of business model innovation, the famous ones at the moment, and have been around for a couple of years now, and they're a bit of a buzzword, but sharing economies. So what is a sharing economy? Well, a sharing economy is an economic model where an individual or an organisation can borrow or rent an asset from someone else who owns that asset. And typically they are assets that are either very high price or they are underutilised a lot of the time. So I'm sure we're all aware of Airbnb. They're another digital disruptive intermediary. They're an aggregator. So they aggregate people's rooms, basically, houses or apartments. And when you're not there, or you've got one that you can rent out, if you're that lucky, someone can come and stay in the area. And they're a really good example of the pace and the magnitude of change that can be brought. So there was a famous tweet from the CEO, Brian Chesky, a couple of years ago. Marriott said, in the next 12 months, we're going to put 20,000 rooms on. And he cheekily tweeted, well, we'll do that in the next 2 weeks. So you can see the magnitude and pace of change. But the one thing that you don't really think about is what underpins these sharing economies, what underpins Uber and Airbnb, and what allows them to grow and continually innovate on top of it. So it's a very robust 3G, 4G, always accessible network. It's always there, it's always on, it's standardized now, and you can build on top of it. And that's a lot like CHEP. So we're one of the original sharing economies. 60 odd years ago, when the Americans left the pallets in 1945 and the Australian government created the Commonwealth Handling Equipment Pool, CHEP, a sharing economy was born. And the network that we have across the world is that infrastructure. It's that standardized infrastructure that allows our customers, whether they be growers, whether they be manufacturers, whether they be retailers or transporters, to have a really standardized, common, unitized network that innovation, through collaboration, can be built upon. So I'm going to go through a couple of examples of where we've done that. Okay, so the first one is a customer that needs-led innovation. So a retailer came to us and they challenged us about the non-alcoholic beverage category. And they said, ultimately, it's very high volume, it's very low margin, and it takes up a lot of space in our stores. And although we're using the current display pallet and beverage tray system to move products all the way through the supply chain, we're finding that the tier 2 and tier 3 carbonated soft drinks aren't being shot down quickly enough, and they're taking up valuable space away from more profitable categories. So we're considering going back to cardboard boxes. So we looked at, around the world, certainly inside first, and we looked to our European counterparts, and they have what's called a European quarter pallet. Now, unfortunately, due to the Americans leaving the pallets in the desert in 1945, it doesn't work here because of the dimensional differences. So the standard footprint is 1165 by 1165 millimeters. So when we trialed that, it just didn't work. But we liked the concept, so we thought, well, we'll make one that's fractional to that size, and we'll knock it up out of wood, and we'll try it. So we worked with the customers, we knocked up some samples out of wood, and we hand-packed onto the beverage trays onto one size of fractional pallet, and we stuck them into store, and lo and behold, it worked. We got better density, better ranging for the customer. But we still hadn't answered the upstream consequences of putting in a smaller fractional pallet. So Frank Vittoria, who was working with me at the time, he said, well, what about if we stick them together? What about if we can join two together so that they are the same footprint as the normal display pallet and run them all the way through the supply chain so that when they get to the back of store, they can be separated and you can just move one in, a bit like Lego. I said, well, what a great idea. How do we do that then? He said, leave it with me and I'll come back to you. So Frank went out to a multitude of our suppliers with a brief, with the idea of how do we fix this. And through different RFQs, and we got different responses, we got different ideas back. And the one that worked was the modular pallet. So these two, you can put a beverage tray, they're one beverage tray wide. So if anyone shops in Aldi, Woolies or Coles and you get your fizzy soda, they're on a beverage tray and a display pallet. They're equivalent to one beverage tray wide. But then when you join them together, they create the standard Australian footprint, which means it can run through True Blue Beverages automation, no problem, go all the way to store and then be separated. And ultimately what that allows you to do is get that really improved SKU density and ranging. So that's just one real world example where we work through an iterative approach, starting with wood, ending up with our suppliers helping us do that. The second example is the retail display unit. So everyone's been into the supermarket and seen those gondola end, high glossy cardboard displays, and then you get the cardboard boxes put in front when people are busy. Very, very inefficient, not very sustainable. It's one-way trip cardboard that has to be disposed of. And it's inefficient from a productivity point of view. So you have to have merchandising teams come into the store and replenish these units because they run through half empty because the cardboard can't carry the weight. So lots of inefficiency, lots of waste. And we've seen this and gone, right, well, we want to do something differently. But how do we fix it? So we've come up with the idea of the retail display unit. But the process of coming up with that idea is a different one. And we thought, well, we didn't quite have the full skill set to come up with the engineering smarts to do that. So we reached out to one of our supply chain partners called Design and Industry, and they specialise in design thinking and engineering products. And we contemplated IKEA kitchens, we contemplated crutches, hospital crutches, we contemplated hinges and scaffolding, we contemplated accordions. But what really was the inspiration for the unit was a babushka doll. And when they brought up the babushka doll, I was looking at them incredulously. What are you talking about, right? But ultimately, they wanted to come up with a solution where the shelves fit into each other. So it goes down, and concertina is down into the display pallet footprint. And that will be able to run through the whole supply chain, which improves promotional execution and compliance for the marketing companies that are trying to get that execution. It takes out waste and cost, and it's a much more sustainable solution. So they're two real-world examples that build upon the network and the infrastructure of a sharing economy. And because they are not one way, they are reusable, it's where the sharing economy and the circular economy converge. So it's not take, make and dispose, it's take, make and reuse. And the more and more we can collaborate and share, the more and more we can drive sustainable change to offset some of those negative impacts of Earth system trends that I showed at the beginning. Working with our customers, by collaborating with them, by collaborating with our suppliers, by trying to understand their needs and better meet their needs, and coming up with new products and new solutions to meet their needs, we are sharing and reusing, and we are actually taking out significant amounts of bad or non-sustainable impacts. So across the world, because of our customers continuing to choose CHEP to supply them with shared and reused products, we're taking about 630,000 tonnes of CO2 out of the atmosphere. We're taking about 420,000 tonnes of waste, or diverting that from landfill, and we're reducing food damage by about 3,000 tonnes. So, and we continue to do that. So innovation is important for the sustainable greater good. And we did take one of the little eggs, or the little Franks, out the freezer. That's why I've got the bags under my eyes, and I'll continue to do that so that he has a much happier future.